Remember that. On a per capita basis, our mortality rate is far lower than other nations of Western Europe, with the lone exception of possibly Germany. This includes the UK, Switzerland, Belgium, the Netherlands, Italy, France.
Fewer deaths per capita. Yay, we're winning.
A mortality rate that is nearly 4 times that of the United States. But you don't hear that. You hear we have more death. But we're a much bigger country than any of those countries, by far. So when the fake news gets out there and they start talking about the United States as number one, but we're not number one. China's number one.
No, we're number
just
one.
So you understand.
That's not fake.
China's number one by a lot. It's not even close. They're way ahead of us in terms of death. It's not even close. You know it. I know it. They know it. But you don't want to report it. Why? You'll have to explain that. Someday I'll explain it.
Because numbers?
Since we released the guidelines to open up America again, and this was 2 days ago, a number of states led by both Democrat and Republican governors have announced concrete steps to begin a safe, gradual, and phased opening. Texas and Vermont will allow certain businesses to open on Monday while still requiring appropriate social distancing precautions. And I can tell you the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, he knows what he's doing. He's a great governor. He knows exactly what he's doing. Montana will begin lifting restrictions on Friday.
Exactly
Ohio,
what he's doing.
North Dakota, and Idaho have advised non-essential businesses to prepare for a phased opening starting
This is
May 1st. Throughout
whiskey,
this crisis,
by the way.
my
I started there.
administration has taken unprecedented actions to rush economic relief to our citizens. As an example, you don't hear any more about ventilators. What happened to the ventilators? And now they're
People
giving
are using them?
the other. It's called
They're breathing?
testing. But
Oh,
they
the
don't
other
wanna
thing, the
use
testing.
all of the capacity that we've created. We have tremendous capacity. Dr. Birx will
Because
be
they don't have
explaining
nasal
that. They know
swabs.
that. The governors know that.
They don't have
The Democrat
the
governors
agent
know that.
that they need. It's
They're the
called
ones that are complaining.
doesn't work.
Through the Paycheck Protection Program, we've already processed nearly $350 billion to 1.6 million small businesses across the nation to keep American workers on the payroll. So we're asking the Democrats
And if you lost your job,
to get it done. This should be bipartisan. This should be 100% vote.
Democrats
And it's
want
really been
also
incredible.
money
The
for hospitals
$350
and for states for
billion
testing.
that's been approved is so popular, and it's keeping businesses open. They'll be open, hopefully forever.
So
Our
popular.
swift action is directly supporting 30 million American jobs. Amy
it's
Wright
good.
from North Carolina, as an example, said the program is a game
If anyone can,
changer for
if
her
anyone's listening, let
and
me
her
know if the audio
family.
levels for me are too
Coffee
hot,
shops.
too loud.
And
What?
she has
Coffee
120
shops?
employees, many of whom have developmental and intellectual disabilities.
You
And
can
now
work
they're all
there.
staying, and they're getting paid, and she's got a dream, and it's going to take place very quickly when she opens again. So, Amy, good luck. North Carolina, great place.
Good luck, Amy. Seriously.
Scott and Julie Alderink help lead a church and own a restaurant in South Dakota.
Good.
With about 15 employees. They were already starting layoffs. Layoffs were moving along rapidly. But now they've hired their employees back, and they can keep their restaurant open, and it'll be moving quickly, very quickly. As opposed to not having anybody and probably not having a place to have all of these people employed. She would have been out of business. She
A
would have been
restaurant,
gone.
as opposed to not having a
The
restaurant?
Paycheck
Just say
Protection
restaurant.
Program funding is now fully drained. It's out. It's gone. $350
gone.
billion to small businesses. And in turn, it goes to the employees of those small businesses. Lawmakers
More
must
whiskey.
stop blocking these funds and replenish the program without delay. The Democrats
Okay.
have to come on board. I used to read
Yeah,
that these
because
were
they want money
Democrat
for hospitals.
programs, not Republican. Seems to have switched
Democratic.
around a lot, hasn't it, huh? Switched around a lot. The Republicans
Yes.
want it,
Republicans are now
Democrats
socialists.
Probably do too. But
Because
they
sometimes
also want
socialism
other things
works.
that are unacceptable. This is about
Oh, yeah.
COVID. This is about
Money for hospitals.
the plague.
Unacceptable.
And what it's done to us. This isn't about extraneous things
Money
that they've
for
been trying to
testing.
get for years,
Unacceptable.
And that our country doesn't want them to have. As we enter the next
Hey,
stage
Kim.
of our battle, we are continuing our relentless effort to destroy the virus. My administration is taking steps to protect high-risk communities by providing funding for 13,000 community health center sites and mobile medical stations in order to equip them with the most advanced and robust testing capabilities.
Mobile. These medical stations,
sites are
they're all
incredible.
from
What they can do
Mobile,
is
Alabama.
The job they do is incredible. These centers provide care to 28
Can I borrow your
million people
mobile
living
phone?
in
They make it in
medically
Alabama.
underserved urban and rural regions, including many African American and Hispanic communities. We're taking
He's
care
such a
of
bad
them.
reader.
And it's so important because you've all been reading about the disproportionate numbers on African American, and you're reading a little bit less about Hispanic, but likewise Hispanic communities. The numbers are disproportionate. In fact, we're doing big studies on it right now. We don't like it. Not right. Nationwide, we've now conducted over 4 million tests. And Deborah will be talking about that. It's double the number
capita.
conducted by any other country on Earth. So that's more than 2 times, actually.
A little
the
bit
number
late, though.
Conducted by any other country on Earth. You hear so much about testing.
You said that.
What we've done is incredible in testing. And I started with an obsolete,
You care
broken
so much about
system
testing.
from a
The press
previous
is to blame for
administration,
testing.
Or administrations.
But
But I would really say
Suddenly he's
administration for a
Creole.
different reason, because testing has become so advanced over the last number of years.
30% false negative.
Of all. I spoke with other nations this morning, the leaders, and they all are talking about our great
They're all
testing
calling.
capability, and some of them want to know
can
what
we
to
have
do.
your tests, said South Korea,
How
with
can
only
they get
200
involved?
dead?
Because they need it for their own countries. In Louisiana, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, and other hotspots, we have also tested
It's
more
higher
people
per capita. There it
by
is.
far
See what he said
than
here?
Italy, Spain,
In
Germany,
certain
France, and
areas,
the
in the
United Kingdom,
hotspots, we've
all other major
tested
countries.
more
So think of
per
that.
capita.
In New
But if you
York,
take the nation
for
as a whole,
instance, per capita testing is 6% higher than in Singapore. In fact,
just in New York. California?
there's a typo. It's 67% higher. There's a big difference. I'd say there's a big difference
There's a-
between 6%
there's
and
a-
60. I was looking, it said
He just
6%
read
doesn't
that
look
wrong.
It's 67%. Good
There's a
job, Al.
typo. There's no typo. He just read
Higher
6.
than Singapore, 64%
Instead of
higher
67.
than South Korea, and 47% higher than Australia. So it's 67% higher than Singapore, which is a very advanced place in terms of what they're doing. My administration
Very
has
advanced
also been
place.
speaking frequently with many of the governors to help them find and unlock the vast unused testing capacity that exists in their states. Dr. Birx discussed yesterday the commercial and academic laboratories in the states have tremendous unused capability, which they can use. The governor should use it. Tremendous
Unused capability that
They're
they can
waiting
use.
for business from these governors.
That's
Some
what
of
you
them
can do with
complain.
unused
I must tell you,
capability.
For the most part, we're getting along
was
great
like,
with them. But some of
What are
them
they going to do with
like
the
to
unused
complain.
capability?
But I still go back because the hardest
He's
thing
really-
overall by
he's a
far,
teacher.
by a factor of 20 is the ventilators.
What?
And now
I missed
we're
that.
the king of
yeah.
ventilators. We have ventilators. We're going to be helping other countries very soon.
Come on
We're
down,
gonna
we're
be
the
helping Mexico. I
ventilator
spoke with the
king.
president of Mexico. He's
Short
great,
of
great
breath,
guy.
about to die.
And I
Come
told
see
him
the
we're gonna be
ventilator
helping
king.
him. They desperately in Mexico need ventilators, and I told him we're going to be helping him very substantially. We're in a position to do that. We're building now thousands a
Good.
week, and they're coming in
Thousands of
rapidly, and
walls
they're very, very
with
high
Mexico?
quality. But we're also helping governors to develop strategies to smartly deploy their testing capacity to protect vulnerable and
I'm not sure he's
underserved
human, so I don't know if he
populations while
loses
getting
sleep at night, Kim.
Americans at lower risk safely back to work. So
Oh,
again,
I
we
can
have
do.
tremendous testing capacity. Now, a lot of people like the Abbott test that we came up with. Abbott, it's a brand new technology, brand new test. It's great. It's 5 minutes.
It
Boom,
is.
you put it in.
Yeah.
And we're making
Boom.
thousands
That's what
of
you do with the
machines.
Abbott test.
Is making
The test that he pulled out and put on its back on the table. That's how you
not
test.
Everybody's going to
Boom.
get that one, but they're going to get
Boom.
others.
You
We
prick
have
and you boom.
numerous platforms.
You
which
jam
we'll
it
talk
in there
about in a
on
minute.
its back.
Unfortunately, some partisan
Such a
voices
strange
are
human
attempting
being.
to politicize the issue of testing, which they shouldn't be doing, because
We
I
just want
inherited
testing.
broken junk, just as they did with
Oh,
ventilators.
it was
where
junk
we had
that was also
virtually
broken.
none, and the hospitals were empty. For the most part, the hospitals didn't have ventilators. We had to take care of the whole country, and we did a job, the likes of which nobody. We assembled an army
Nobody
of
had ever seen it
young,
before.
brilliant people. For the most part, young. A
Young.
couple of
Dr.
older ones.
Fauci's young?
But for the most part, they
Dr.
were young,
Fauci's like 145
brilliant
years old.
geniuses
He invented the cure for
that
death.
did a job like nobody would believe. I wish you could have seen it. Round the clock.
Yeah.
And now the rest of the world's coming to us asking if we could help them with ventilators, because they're very complicated, very expensive. They're,
Mike Pence says they're not complicated.
Very hard to build.
The
And
price
we
has
have
been
them
driven
coming
up
in by the
because
thousands.
Trump
But you
here
don't
made
hear that
everybody
from even
compete.
the governors. Nobody's complaining about ventilators. And if there was a surge, we could have ventilators to them within hours, because we haven't stockpiled almost 10,000 ventilators. You don't hear about hospital beds. When I first started, everyone was talking, oh, hospital beds, hospital beds. The governor of New York correctly asked me for hospital beds, and we got the Army Corps of Engineers out, and they built them. He needed them. I mean, I know he said that we were projecting. We're not projecting New York. We're listening to the governors. He wanted them. He needed them, and we gave him
We're not projecting
thousands
New York?
of beds in Javits Center. We brought the ship. Then the ship, we had it converted.
Yeah, you prepare for the worst.
COVID-19.
That's what you do.
And that was a big deal, by the way, because of ventilation
Yeah.
and all the things we had to do, but we did. And fortunately
was.
for him and for us, all of us,
Yes.
they haven't used either one very much because the numbers have
Yes.
gone down significantly. But it was there,
Good.
and it was built, and it was beautiful. 2,900 beds.
Well, as long as it was
It
beautiful.
was incredible what they did. They did it in a matter of a few days. But unfortunately, and it was very good, the relationship was very good. And I'm frankly glad they don't need them.
It's
But they were there.
always about
Louisiana,
relationships.
the same thing. I think the governor, Democrat, good
Trump
guy.
didn't have any friends as a kid, so
And he will.
everything is
I can
relationships to
tell
him.
you a story that we had more than enough, and I said, well, we're supposed to build one more. I called him. I said, you know, if we don't have to build this hospital, it was an additional anywhere from 500 to 1,000 beds. If you don't need it, would it be possible that we don't build it? Would like to build it someplace else, or not build it at all and save money, which is okay for government too. Use it someplace else. And he called me back the next day, and he said, sir, we don't need it. I said, that's great that you say that. I appreciate it. And he didn't need it. But we were ready to go. We took good care of Louisiana. We took good care of Michigan. We took good care of every place. We didn't miss a trick. And we're in great shape on testing. We have different platforms. We actually have 9 different platforms. And on Monday, we're going to be adding one. That'll be 9 to 10. I don't like to count on them before they're up, but we'll have anywhere from 9 to 10 platforms with a tremendous
Quokley.
testing capability.
I love your commentary too.
And people can go, and especially with phase 1. Now, at the same time, just like with ventilators, we're building now the best ventilators.
The best,
Just like with
the highest
ventilators,
quality
Our
ventilators.
testing is getting better and better.
He's the
I took
ventilator
the first
king.
Test. The first test was
Yeah.
not pleasant. This was not a pleasant thing. I said, you got to be kidding to the doctor. You got to be kidding.
I'd rather die.
Up your nose, and then we hang a right,
And then
it goes down
right
here.
around the corner.
And then we'll
Yeah.
wiggle it around here under your eye, and then we'll pull it out, and we'll say, I
Oh.
said, no, that's
You put a swab in your
there's no way that
nose.
can happen. Is that the way it goes?
No
You
one's
sure?
good. People are going to
This is a
die.
very
They won't put
unpleasant
the
test.
swab.
And then I was tested a few weeks later with the new
He
test
has
that just
never
came
had
out,
a
the
digital
Abbott,
exam.
where they just touch your nose, basically, and they put it in a machine, and literally.
That's
a few
why he only
minutes
went
later,
for
they
phase
tell you
1 of his medical.
if you're
Phase 2
fine.
was bend
I
over
was
and
lucky
drop
in
him.
both cases, because I've seen the damage that this does to people. But we have great tests. They've really gotten better and better and better as we go along. But we have a tremendous lab capability, laboratory capability all over the country. And for some reason, the governors They're not, a lot of them are, but some of the governors like to complain and they're not using it. We have tremendous capability. We're ready for them. And as
It's
we
tough
go
when the
along,
governors
just like with the
complain
ventilators,
because
we'll
their
get
people are dying.
better, more advanced, and we'll be able to do things that nobody would have even believed possible.
Feel for the little
we
guy.
started off with a broken system. We inherited a broken, terrible system. And I
Terrible.
always say it, our cupboards were bare. We
You
had
do.
very little in our stockpile. Now we're loaded up. And we also loaded up
Daniel
these
Dale,
hospitals.
fact check.
And
The president
we're
is
talking about
again
payment.
saying
We gave
stuff.
billions of dollars worth of things to hospitals, and we'll have to work that out at some point. In fact, I guess they're going to be working that
You're
out
gonna
with
charge the
Congress.
hospitals?
But we loaded
Yeah.
up hospitals. The federal government loaded up hospitals with
Yeah.
things to take care of people that
You
are
know, the
very
welfare of the
desperately ill.
people.
We weren't worried about payment at that time. We
He
said, we'll
has
take care of it
never
at the
read the
right time.
Constitution.
But we gave billions
He
and
can't read.
billions and billions of dollars worth
Billions
of
and
medical
billions and billions.
goods and medicines
Goods.
and equipment to hospitals.
The best medical.
We'll work it out with them. But people don't like to talk about that. So we have
No.
done a job that nobody believed. This was a military and private enterprises march. We marched. And unfortunately, with the other side, because they're viewing it as an election. How did President Trump do? Oh, he did terribly. Let's see. He did, he did terribly. Oh.
I like everybody on
We
the
just
other
got 'em
side.
ventilators that they
Talks
didn't
like
have that
this.
they should have had.
He did.
We just got them
and they look
hospital
up.
beds by the thousands. We just got them testing.
Unless you're a reporter, and
that
then
they
you
don't
do
even know how
that
to use.
thing.
In some cases, they have machines that they're only using
That's another
5%
topic.
and 10% of the machine because they have an advanced machine and they don't know how to use it. It can do much more. So we've had people explain how to use it. So I don't know. I don't think I'd do that on the other side. I really don't. I think that here we have a crisis and we have to work together, and I hope we're going to work together. But we're moving along, and we're moving along well. We're moving
Good.
along well. This should not be a partisan witch hunt, like the Russia witch hunt that turned out to be a total phony deal. Unfortunately, some of these
God,
voices,
his makeup
though,
is
are
bad today. Look how
attempting
orange he is.
to bring this into politics, and whether it's testing or ventilators or hospital beds or other dimensions of our sweeping public health response, we have had a sweeping response. And speaking to the leaders of other countries this morning, they said, "This is incredible the way you've done this so quickly." We're only talking about a few weeks since everybody knew this was such a big problem.
It's only been a few
the
weeks
rest of
in
the
this
world is watching, and they respect what we've
exponentially
done,
expanding
'cause I don't think
pandemic.
anybody else, I know nobody else could have done what we've done. And we started with
Killed most of your citizens?
garbage. As our experts said
South
yesterday,
Korea is
America's
kicking your
testing
ass, Trump.
capability and capacity is fully sufficient to begin opening up the country totally. Indeed, our system is by far the most robust and advanced anywhere in the world by far. The rest of the world will tell you that. I spoke this morning to a friend of mine, President Moon of South Korea. He just won the election. He won it by a lot. He had a big victory, which I was happy about. And he was saying what a great job we've done in this country. I told him the same thing. He said, what a great job.
Moon did not tell Trump
we've
that
done
he's
here
doing a
in
great
this
job.
country. So I appreciated that. He had a great,
South
by the way,
Korea
a great
started
victory.
testing and
We're very
containing
happy about
immediately.
that.
That's why
From
they've only
the
had
standpoint of our
230
country,
deaths.
Working very well with them. South Korea.
Yeah,
As
South
we
Korea.
approach, and the approach that we use, but as we approach, hopefully, the downward side of what's going on, I think you're going to see some incredible hard facts and evidence that what we did was right. There's a lot of talk about herd, the word herd. I don't want to show you
I heard about
charts of
that.
people that went a different way, but it's scary. It's scary.
Mm-hmm.
We would have had, I think, millions of people die had we done a different way. And I think numbers are just coming out where they're estimating.
If you'd done things the way
60,000
South
people
Korea
will
did,
die.
we'd
That's
have
horrible.
very,
I
very
always say
few
one person
deaths.
is too much, especially in this case when it could have been stopped in China. Could have been stopped in
Oh,
China
it's China's fault.
before it
China's
started.
fault.
And it wasn't.
South Korea
and
had the
whole
same
world was
information from
suffering
China
because of
that
it.
the United States did.
But,
and they did something.
This herd
So did
concept,
Singapore,
and
so did
everybody
Hong
had
Kong.
to think of it at the beginning.
Japan did.
because
Now
look-
they're in trouble,
look
too.
At us. We had the greatest economy in the history of the world. Better than
we did
China,
not.
better than any
GDP
country
was
in the world,
2.1.
better than any country has ever had. We had the highest stock market in history
$1 trillion
by far.
deficit.
And I'm honored by the fact that it has started to go up very substantially. That's because the market is smart.
He's
The
honored.
market is actually brilliant. I've seen it. And they're viewing it
He's
like we've done a good job. They view it that way. Because
stock
if you
market
would have told
goes
me
up,
that we're
I'm
at
honored.
24,000 or beyond, and the highest
What?
we were ever was we never hit
That's-
30. We were getting close to 30. So let's say around 29,000.
So we're down
we're at
5,000?
24. We were heading down. I would start to say, oh well, we may be heading into territory where I started. I didn't like that. Now we're way up. But if you would have
No,
said
we
to me
passed
with
where
what
you started.
we've gone through, not caused by
Uh-huh.
our country or our people or not caused by certainly anybody within our country, but if you would have said that after going through this horrible plague, that we'd have a
Thank
stock
you,
market that's much,
Mary?
much higher than when I started.
This makes it more fun for me.
Much higher than where I started. And
It's
I think it's
still a
I
bear
think we have
market.
tremendous momentum.
We're down
We have a big
5,000
election
points.
coming up, but I think we have tremendous momentum. First, we get rid of the plague, and because of what we're doing with the PPP, what we're doing with the
PPP.
paycheck, as we call it, I think we have a chance
Yeah,
to have
the
these
PPP.
companies get
You
back
just
to
said it.
action quickly. But our approach to testing is based on facts, data, and very hard evidence, not partisan agendas or coordinated political talking points. Mike Pence, who's a phenomenal guy, is making the commencement address right now at the Air
he
Force
hardworking?
Academy, where they're being
24/7?
very politically correct. Everyone's standing not 6 feet, but 10 feet apart, okay? And it's
Social
very different. I
distancing
made
is
that speech
political
last year. I'm
correctness.
going to West Point. I think they're changing the date to June 13th because of what's going on in New York.
They're trying
They're
not to
moving
kill
it to
everyone,
June 13th,
being
West
very
Point.
politically
So during
correct,
their commencement
loving your
speech,
grandparents.
And they're going to have, sad, but it's a big start.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to have the cadets. They may not have the parents, but they're going to
Yeah.
have the cadets. The parents are so proud of them. I know at the Air Force Academy where Mike is speaking right now, they don't have the parents. They have the cadets. They're very, very widespread. And you talk about social distancing. I mean, they are really spread. I looked at it. They're using 10 feet.
Yeah,
So he's doing that, but they're having it. It's very important to have
that's so politically
it.
correct.
And that's a great thing. That's a great thing. That's a big start. So he's there right now, and I will tell you,
Ramping on.
he's a gentleman, Mike Pence, a real gentleman. And they requested, the Democrat
Does he work
senators
24/7?
requested a phone call with him yesterday, and I think they had, for the most part, all of them on, like approximately 47. I heard it was just about all of them, whatever it might be. I don't want to be wrong by
It's
one
probably
or 2
4.
or 10, and have the press say he lied, that he told a lie, terrible, terrible, whatever it was. But they have 47.
That's what the press
and
sounds like.
I guess most
he
of them knew
lied.
it.
He lied.
I heard
Terrible,
they were so
terrible.
rude. I used
Yeah.
the term today. I said rude and nasty, but I heard they were so rude. No matter what he said, which was all very positive in terms of winning this battle against the invisible enemy. No matter what he said, they were fresh. They were
Fresh.
nasty.
Those
And
fresh
it was, I heard,
dungarees.
just a terrible thing. And I said, Mike, that's politics. That's what it is. If we came
Yeah.
into this room today and said
Mike
the
is so
battle
new to
is
politics.
over, we have won. It's 100% gone. The Democrats would say the president has done a horrible job. He has done a disgraceful job. It is
Well,
a
that's-
shame how bad he is.
I mean, it's literally not
this
true.
is the talking points. This is political,
So-
and it would be nice not to have that, especially when we've done the job we've done. I mean, all you have to do is look at the big V for victory or V for ventilator. Take a look at it. Everybody said they had us on that.
Yeah.
They had
V
us.
for
They thought they
ventilator,
had us,
or
but we got them done
the
at
way
numbers
that
nobody would
the
have believed.
disease expanded throughout the
And
country.
we did use our act.
That- That V.
Our production act.
And then the death
We
rate
used it, but
followed.
we didn't use it.
There's another
We
V.
didn't need it like a hammer. All we had to do, for the most part, we used it actually in a number of cases, but for the most part, all we had to do is talk about it. All we had to do is say, we're going to use it if you don't do this. And everybody was, for the most part, good. We used it a couple of times because it didn't work out.
So the
easy way.
DPA that should have been
But it worked out the
instituted
hard way.
in late
But whether it
January
was
saying we need
masks
these
or
supplies, we need the
ventilators,
PPE,
it
we
was
need the
incredible
testing
what we've been able to
agents,
do.
etc.
So this is a very critical time for the American
Was
people.
never actually invoked,
And the American people
except after GM.
deserve real information and responsible and thoughtful dialogue from their elected leaders and from the media. The media's been some very honest, but some very dishonest. You know that. You know that. I mean, I even read a story where Mark
We're the
Meadows,
media. We know
tough
that.
guy. He was crying. He was crying. There was Maggie Haberman. She won a Pulitzer Prize for her coverage of Russia, but she was wrong.
Wait,
in
Maggie
Russia.
Haberman was
So
crying?
was everyone else. They should all give back their Pulitzer Prizes. In fact,
was
it turned
crying?
out that the crime was committed by the other side. The crime was not committed by this side. It was committed by the other side, a bunch of bad people. You saw the reports coming out over the last 2 weeks. They got caught. So Maggie Haberman gets a Pulitzer Prize. She's a third-rate reporter, New York Times. And we put her name up here
in that
last week.
campaign,
You saw that?
yeah,
People thought it
because
was
you
a
used
commercial. It
what she
wasn't a
said in a
commercial.
campaign commercial.
It's like a commercial,
Yeah,
but it wasn't a commercial. It was just
It was
clips.
commercial.
And
It's
because we
commercial.
exposed
It's a-
her as being
Clips
a
making
bad
you look
reporter,
good, put all together.
what happened
Commercial.
is she came out and said Mark Meadows was crying, and they made
Yeah.
it sound. I said, Mark, and it's okay if he did. I wouldn't, look. But I think he was crying probably really
Why?
for the wrong reason. They had it down. But he's not a crier. And if he was, I don't cry. So I could tell you people that you know that are very famous, they cry, and that's okay too. But it was a nasty
Oh,
story.
look,
in
I have a
so many
focus
ways.
thing
It was
around my
fake news.
face.
And she only did it because
I don't know how to make that
exposed
go
her
away. Sorry. Let's go back to
for
Mark
being
Meadows crying.
a terrible, dishonest reporter. She is. I've known her for a long while. I haven't spoken to her a long time. I made the mistake. I take a picture with her at the desk a long time ago. Every time she does a story, if I say, I haven't spoken to her in many, many, many months, maybe years.
So Maggie Haberman
I don't
is
think
a
she's
top-notch,
a lot
excellent
of people
reporter.
are fake. A lot of people. We get a lot of fake
Maggie
people. But
Haberman
what
is not
happens
fake.
is she
She's a
writes this
great
story
podcast guest, by the way.
as retribution, puts it in the New York Times, and the New York Times is a very dishonest newspaper. It's my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's not an opinion. It's actually, from my standpoint, the very hard thing to figure, though, most people wouldn't know that, but I know because I know the facts. And they make up, I said it today, they make up words.
It's not an
Sources
opinion.
say, most often used, sources say. You know what sources say means? Sources say means they have nobody. And
Nobody.
they make it up. Okay? And they have a few other type
Just like
statements that mean
sources
the
said
same
that
thing. But
Don
sources
McGahn
say
was
is the
told
most
to
often
fire
used in the Washington
Mueller.
Post,
That
New
turned
York
out to
Times
be...
especially CNN, fake news.
No, wait,
CNN.
Comey. Wait.
They should
Mueller,
really
all of
be
it.
mandated,
I
and
can't
I
even
mean
keep track.
mandated, to use a name.
Man,
If there's a source, use a name. Say that Kayleigh McEnany said, or somebody. And you
Kayleigh
find out
McEnany,
that the, number one, the source wouldn't say it. The sources don't exist. I don't believe the sources exist. And I try and tell this, the beautiful thing about doing these
I know. I
conferences is that
disregarded.
we have tremendous numbers of
Mary,
viewers.
I
and I'm able to
unsubscribed
reach
from the New York
viewers
Times
without
after I
having
found
to
that
go
out.
through fake news where they make a good story into a bad story. So with all of that, it's been an incredible
Kayleigh
period
said
of time. We've done
that the president was never going to allow the
fantastic
virus into this
job
country,
with
so
the
I'm not
talk
even
of
sure why
other
we're having
nations.
these
The leaders
pressers,
of
because
other
the virus
nations
never
are calling
came.
us for help. They're calling us for equipment. They're calling us for testing capacities. Now,
No, they're not.
with the testing, we are going further. And Deborah's going to talk about that now. With the testing, we have some other tests coming up that are going to be, I think, phenomenal.
they're gonna talk about
I think
serology.
they're
This
gonna
is
blow away
actually
everything
good.
as soon as they come out.
CNN
And we're gonna
doesn't
get
have it
them
on?
out as soon as possible. But I'd like to ask Dr. Birx to come up and say
Oh,
a few
that's gonna
words
drive
about
him nuts.
where we've come, how far we've come, and more importantly, where
Let's
we're
take a
going
look at
from
who's
this
broadcasting
point.
this.
Because honestly, it's quite amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. If we could have the first slide.
MSNBC is showing it.
I wanted to give you an update
No,
on
CNN
where we
is showing
are
this.
as states and as counties and as cities.
And so is
I
Fox.
know you
So
all
yeah,
are
this is
watching
broadcast
carefully.
on all the three
numbers
major
have
networks.
shifted over the last few days. What happens when nations, when states change the reporting from confirmed to probable? So now all probable cases are included. They had to add them back in. Even though the cases may have been from March, they were added over 14th, 15th, and 16th of April, and states may continue to be adding them. Eventually, we're hoping that those get accounted for on the day when the presumptive cases or the probable cases were counted, but right now they're added in one fell swoop. So this is New York and New Jersey, and I think we all know how difficult and what a difficult time both New York and New Jersey have had. I call your attention to the axis. It goes up to 250,000 cases, so you can get a frame of how we're talking about some of the other metro areas. Next slide. These are the 25 metro areas, the top 25 metro areas, and you can only see the New York metro area in this slide. Again, the axis goes up to about 300,000, includes the New Jersey part of the metro area as well as part of southern Connecticut. Next slide. But if I take New York out, and the reason I wanted to do that, now the axis is 1/10 of the previous axis. So that previous axis, the previous slide, 300,000. This slide, 30,000.
Wow.
So that will give you a frame of reference for some of these other metros. The reason I wanted to show you this is cumulative cases, and we are still tracking very closely the issues in Chicago and Boston. But on this slide, I hope you can see the yellow line. That is Detroit. And Detroit and this mayor of Detroit has really done an extraordinary job, and the people of Detroit have done an extraordinary job with their social distancing. The other line I want to call your attention to is the line here. This is New Orleans. And I think, frankly, I was concerned
can't see
about
what she's
New
referring
Orleans
to.
because they had a lot of pre-existing comorbidities.
Where's New Orleans?
They have 2 or 3 major hospitals, but cover a very large area of geographic area. And that other blue line that you can see that's down right here, that's the Seattle line. And you can see that their response, because of the nursing home alert, they were one of the first states and the first metro areas to really move to social distancing.
I'm going to Seattle.
And so they've really never had a peak like many of the other metros. Next slide. And then I just want to take you through some of these new case graphics. That was cumulative cases. This is daily cases. And obviously there's a lot of variability in reporting, but you get a sense over time when you look at daily cases. So New Orleans is on panel on your left.
CNN only cut in when Burke started.
Right.
Thanks,
but
Kathy.
You can see clearly New Orleans about a month ago, very low levels, probably less than 50 cases. Large peak and spike around the beginning of April, and they have come down, and they have down to very few cases. Again, I showed you before how both their syndromic cases have come down, as well as their actual number of cases. Next slide. This is Seattle, so you can see they had a much lower peak. And this is when we talk about flattening the curve. This is what
Seattle
flattening
needs to
the
stop
curve
smoking
looks
so much.
like. It becomes a longer, slower decline, but it never gets very high, and then
So that's the
goes
3
back
counties
down.
around Seattle.
Next slide. And then this is Detroit, and we always look at the metros as a consolidated, so this is both
Same thing.
Wayne and Oakland in Michigan, and we really want to thank the mayor for the incredible job that they have done to really ensure that everyone is receiving the adequate health care and testing, and they've done quite a good job with testing in Michigan. But all of these states, Louisiana and New York, have tested 30,000 per million inhabitants. Those are some of our highest numbers across the board. And next slide. And so the president talked about the case fatality rates, and we've lost a lot of Americans to this disease, and we pray and hope for each one of them that are in the hospitals and the excellent care. What this graph illustrates is the amazing work of the American people to really adhere to social distancing. This was nothing we had ever attempted to do as a nation, and the world hadn't attempted to do. But they were able to decrease the number of cases so that in general, most of the metro areas never had an issue of complete crisis care of all of their hospitals in a region. And so you can see our case fatality rate is about half to a third of many of the other countries.
Excuse me, does anybody really believe this number? Does anybody really believe?
Oh, the president's going to interrupt and
I
attack
put
China.
on there so you could see how basically unrealistic
China
this
went to
could
full
be.
lockdown.
When highly developed healthcare delivery systems of the United Kingdom and France and Belgium and Italy and Spain with extraordinary doctors and nurses delivery system, and then China at 0.33. You realize that these numbers, even then this includes the doubled number out of Wuhan. And so I want it really to put it in perspective, but I wanted you also to see how
Bud. I'd like to
great
see a
the care
testing
has been for every
grid.
American that has been hospitalized. And an
For America, it
extraordinary
would look like
work
this.
of our doctors
Just
and nurses
flat,
and our
flat, 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 flat,
laboratorians
flat,
on the
flat,
front
flat,
line
flat.
who have been doing an excellent job. Next slide. And then we
Meanwhile,
also
South
wanted
Korea
to
would look like
show
this.
Also, the number for Iran. Does anybody really believe that number? You see what's going on over there. Does
Shut
anybody-
the
you put
fuck
that slide
up,
back, will
Tubby.
you? Does anybody believe
Put the other slide back.
this number? Does anybody believe this number?
Yeah, he's 238 pounds.
You saw more.
Look
And
at
this
the
is
man.
why-
He's a
on
blob.
television than that.
This is why the reporting is so important. And I think you remember almost 6 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I was telling you what Italy was showing to us and what France was telling to us and the warnings that they gave to us and said, be very careful. There's an extraordinary high mortality among people with pre-existing conditions. And we used their information to bring that to the American people. That alert
Was Belgium up at the
before
top
we
of the
even
chart?
had significant cases came from our European colleagues on the front line. And that's why we keep coming back to how important in a pandemic and a new disease, it's really critical to have
Oh,
that level of
I just saw a heart
transparency
go up the
because it
screen.
changes how we work as a nation. It allowed us.
Thanks for the hearts. I feel
over
like
March
Kevinly
15th,
Daughter.
to make an alert
She's
out
live
there
broadcasting
about
upstairs
vulnerable
right now.
individuals and
And
the
they
really the
send her
need
hearts
to protect them, and my
and-
call out to
and
millennials
ice cream
to really
and then
protect their parents,
racing
protect
cars,
their
and then she can take
grandparents, and get
those
that information
and trade
out
them
to
in
everyone, that there
for
were
cash.
pre-existing
She's
conditions
making
that
money
put
right
people
now
at
live
greater
streaming.
risk.
I just tell people
That
she's a YouTuber because
information
that's
came
how
from
old
our
people
European
understand
colleagues
things.
who were in the midst of their
pretty
battle
cool.
themselves. And so there's
So she came
never
downstairs,
an
she's like,
excuse to
"Oh,
not
you're trying to
share
be me."
information. When you are the first country to have
Oh,
an
look at all those
outbreak,
hearts!
you really have a moral obligation to the world to not only talk
feel
about
so
it,
loved.
but provide that information that's critical to the rest of the world to really respond to this credibly. And I really want to thank our European colleagues who worked so hard to get us that information.
Okay, enough with the
even
hearts.
in the midst
Thank
of
you.
their own tragedies. And I think that really shows how important transparency is. And we go to the next slide. We can show you this really encouraging and great
How important
news.
transparency is.
So we know that
Yeah.
fatalities will continue to lag because people are in hospitals still, and some are still in intensive care units. But these
Yeah.
COVID-like illnesses, this is our hospitalizations that are related to flu per 100,000 Americans. This is this year's flu season, and you can see our COVID-like illnesses, and this is all of them, probable and confirmed cases. Our hospitalizations are declining. Now, I showed you metros that have made tremendous progress, and we've been up here many times talking about it being 6, 10, 15 additional cities. And now we're really just focused on Chicago and Boston and Massachusetts, and really some issues that Providence is starting to improve now, so their relationship to the two large outbreak cities. But this is really reassuring to us of the progress we're making across the country against this disease. And I just really want to conclude by thanking again the American people for making these type of graphics possible, thank the data team who puts these together for me. So they are working till about 3:30 every morning to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information. That's the data that goes to our supply chain individuals to ensure that every hospital in every state and every community has what they need based on data, and to make sure that we're serving the needs of the American people as effectively
While this has been going
as
on, Maggie
possible.
Haberman commented,
Thank you, Mr. President.
tweeted out that at first the president said the story of Mark Meadows crying was fake, and now he's changed that to the Mark Meadows was crying for another reason.
We've been learning a lot from Deborah and Tony and
Maggie's
so
great.
many of the professionals, the director. PEPFAR.
Look at the way he leans on the podium.
The United States.
Gone now.
With that help,
United
to the best
States.
of my knowledge, mostly in Africa, $6 billion a year. And that's on AIDS.
Africa's going to get
What
hammered.
we've done for AIDS in Africa is unbelievable.
We should be
spent $6
streaming
billion
money
a
into
year.
Africa right now.
That's been going on for
You
a
can't
long
stop
time.
the virus
Nobody
until you
knows
stop
that.
it in Africa.
You've never heard that? I've never heard that. $6 billion a year. Millions of
We've
people
been
are
giving
living
money
right
to
now and
AIDS in
living very
Africa since
comfortably
the 90s.
because of the fact that we have found the answer to that horrible, horrible plague. That was a plague. But we spend $6 billion a year. And from what I hear, it's very well spent, done by professionals, including this great professional right here. That was the thing that you worked hardest on and something that was very close to her heart. So it's, it's something that I think people should start hearing. The World
AIDS is something.
Health Organization, we're just finding more and more problems, and we spend this money really well. There are other ways we can spend
Cheers, Bev.
the $500
I got this much Jack
million.
Daniels.
That's $500 million. This is $6 billion.
I'm kidding, of course.
we can
It's
find
my
other
own
ways to
urine
spend
because,
it where
quarantine.
People are going to be
Can't
helped,
waste it.
we think, in a much greater way. We're doing some research on certain people that take a lot of credit for what they do. And
What?
NIH is giving away a lot of money.
Oh,
We
he's
give
probably
away
talking
for
about
years,
the
for
WHO.
many years. They give away a lot of money, and some people complain, and some people don't. Some people are extremely happy. So we're looking into that also. They're giving away approximately, as I understand it, recently more than $32 billion a year. $32 billion. And so we've been looking at that for a while, and we're going to be having some statements to be made about that. $32 billion a year. It's a lot of money, and we want to make sure it's being spent wisely. And we've been
CNN
doing
is
that,
staying with this, by the way.
We'll have some.
They haven't cut away from the
statements on
president
that.
yet.
And those are much bigger numbers than what we're talking about with national. If you look with our friends from wherever they come from, 500 million
Wherever they come from.
is a lot of money, but it's not a lot compared to the kind of money that we give out. I think
He
over the
never has
years,
any specifics,
been
and when he
averaging about
does,
$32
they're
billion.
wrong.
$32 billion. So
He starts
We've
sentences,
had our eye on
sentences
that one
without
for a
having
while.
any idea how he's going to end them.
we also talked about the lab in China, where I guess 3.7 million was given some time ago, and we're looking at that very closely. Chief of Staff has that pretty much under control, but it's money that, too bad it got spent there. But that was spent, what year was that, Mark? It was 4 or 5 years ago.
Over the last 6 years.
Well, I
6
wouldn't
years
cry
ago,
about it, Mark.
approximately. So we're looking at that, and that's the lab that people are talking about. All right, so
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at a lot of things. There's tremendous waste in our government. We found it in many different ways and in many different forms, and this is one of them.
Medical research is
one
a
of them.
huge
We can
waste.
spend, I was talking to Dr. Birx, we can spend $500 million using all of it in a much more efficient manner if we choose to do that. And it'll be to the good of many more
Just
people
look at
than
his
are getting
tan.
it right now.
Nobody's eyes are that color.
But you look at the mistakes that were made, I mean, so late, long after I said we have to close off our country.
No, I'm
they were
watching
actually
CNN. It's
against
still
our
there,
closing
Mary.
off our country to China. When I did that in January, they were against that. They didn't like the idea of closing off our country. They said it was a bad thing to do, actually. And they've since taken that back. But it was a very
No,
lucky
but
thing that we did.
all
it.
of that is
Very
wrong.
lucky. We would have had
All of
numbers
that is
were
wrong.
very significantly greater. Tony Fauci said that. He said it would have been very significantly greater had we not done that. So we made a lot of moves that were good moves, but it's still a very depressing subject because it's a lot of death. And if it was stopped very early on at the source before it started,
If we tested
into
and
these
contained,
proportions,
yeah,
you have 184
Yeah.
countries that would have been in a lot better shape.
that's
But our
He's
country is
always
getting
wrong.
back,
Let's
and
see if
I
he finally got
expect
that right.
that we're going to be bigger, better, and
Wrong
stronger
computer.
than ever before. I will take a few questions. Jeff?
Mr. President, you've mentioned, and the doctor has mentioned China a few times today, that clearly suggesting that the data has not been good. And
Well, you tell me, do you think that data is good when you see that? Do you think that's correct, okay? Do you honestly believe that's
pretty
correct?
dramatic contrast. So my question for you,
Yeah, it's dramatic.
so my question for you, sir, is
Why didn't the press, why didn't you people figure that out, though? Why do we have to put up a chart? The number is impossible, it's an impossible number to hit. But why haven't you come up and said that?
the question, sir, is China now cooperating with the United States to figure out what happened, and what do you want from them now?
Well, they said they're doing an investigation, that they're doing an investigation. So let's see what happens with their investigation, but we're doing investigations also. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. You've spoken, we heard Dr. Birx a moment ago say that every country has a responsibility to tell the rest of the world what's going on. You've talked repeatedly about how this could have been stopped in the past. I know you don't want to telegraph what you would do, but do you think that there should be some consequences if in the end, China was responsible for all of this?
Well, if they were knowingly responsible, certainly. If it was a mistake is a mistake. But if they were knowingly responsible, yeah, then there should be consequences. You're talking about, potentially
because President
lives
Xi
like
is his
nobody's
friend.
seen since
So
1917. And, the other thing, had we not done
1918,
what we did
Spanish
in
flu was in
terms of closing, 'cause there
1918.
is
That's
that
never
concept
changed.
of, let's let it ride. But at some point, I'm going to have to, I don't want to embarrass countries that I like and leaders that I like, but you have to see some of these numbers. In my opinion, so we're talking about maybe 60,000 or so. That's a lot of people, but that's 100,000 was the minimum we thought that we could get to, and we will be lower than that number, anywhere from 100 to 220,000 people. But I really believe it could have been millions of people had we not done what we did. We made a lot of good decisions, but one of those things. Go ahead.
Have you ruled out that this was an unknowing situation? Have you ruled
I haven't
out that
ruled
there was
out
no-
anything. I want to look at the facts as they come in. No, I want to look at the facts, please.
quiet.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Last week, you claimed that you're in charge of everything, yet the American people don't understand why you're unwilling to use the Aussie powers of your presidency to make American companies
know why
manufacture
this team's
PPE
playing. Hold on.
and also the testing
Sorry about
equipment
that.
that you
Who
need
you
to
with?
implement your recommendations.
I know, but who are you
on
with?
I'm with TMN. Recommendations for
TMN. What is
Talk
TMN?
Media News.
What?
My name is Doug Christian with Talk Media News. Yes.
Talk Media News.
Yeah. And
Go ahead, keep reading your question.
the thing is how to make companies build these testing equipment so that you can do what you want,
Well, we're
what you
doing that
recommended.
right now. We're doing it. We're doing it right now with ventilators. We have General Motors. We have
Testing's
General Electric.
perfect.
We have 11 different companies, great companies, building them for us all over the United States. We're starting to make our own gowns, as they call it. We're
Ha!
making some incredible things. And as far as the testing is concerned, most of that now is done in the United States. We're doing it in the United States, our different platforms. And so I just don't think you were listening.
Senators were complaining to,
Which
to
senators?
Vice President
Which
Pence
senators?
yesterday.
Which senators?
Independent Senator Angus King.
He's not an independent, okay? Angus King is worse than any Democrat. Go ahead.
But he said that he
Angus
was,
King is
he was
independent.
livid,
That's how it's
actually.
classified.
He said that because he's a Democrat, okay? Angus King is not an independent. He uses
So
that
if you can't
term
get
for
tests,
whatever
it's
reason.
political.
It's a waste of time.
But he's not a very emotive type
Oh,
of
yes, he
senator.
is. You haven't seen him. Okay, you haven't seen him.
When
No.
confronted with
Angus
a
King is
question
a
he doesn't
Democrat,
like,
and
he
that was
changes the
totally
subject
staged.
immediately. Suddenly it's about
I heard
Angus
that.
King being
and
a
it was totally
Democrat.
staged. Just like you read the question, he read his question. Yeah, please, in the back.
Mr. President, I want to ask
douche.
you about one of your retweets that you.
Which one?
The one you retweeted from Paul Sperry, let's see if authorities enforce the social distancing orders for mosques during Ramadan like they did churches during Easter. I'm wondering...
No, I would like to see that. And, I just spoke with leaders and people that love mosques. They love mosques. And I'm all in favor of that. But I would say that there could be a difference, and we'll have to see what will happen. Because I've seen a great disparity in this country. I've seen a great disparity.
There should be a word
I've seen
for
a very
racist,
strong
but
anti-Israel bent in
with
Congress
religion.
with Democrats.
Religious.
It was unthinkable 7 or 8 or 10 years ago, and now they're into a whole different thing between Omar and AOC. I say AOC plus 3, add them on. You have, the things that they say about Israel are so bad, and I can't believe it. Now, just a minute. So I would be interested to see that, because they go after Christian churches, but they don't tend to go after mosques, and I don't want them to go after mosques, but I do want to see what their bent is. Yes, please, in the back.
So, Mr. President, that in fact,
Go ahead, please.
suggesting that imams
this
would
OAN?
follow social
No,
distancing?
I think that
No.
I just had a call with imams. I just had a call with ministers, rabbis.
Imams,
We had a
with
tremendous
your
call with the faith
dads.
leaders. No, I don't think that at all. I am somebody that believes in faith.
An idiot?
And it matters not what your faith is, but our politicians seem to treat different faiths very differently. And they seem to think, and I don't know what happened with our country, but
Really?
the Christian
There's
faith is treated much differently than it was.
the
And I think it's
irony
treated
of the
very
man who
unfairly.
wanted to
Yes,
stop
please, go
all
ahead, in the
Muslims
back.
from entering the country,
Department of Justice will, in fact,
saying that
support
some
OAN.
politicians treat different religions differently.
Program saved an estimated 15 million jobs. It's run
need
out
more
of
whiskey.
money. The Democrats, specifically Nancy Pelosi, have been blocking that funding.
Yeah.
Do you know why Speaker Pelosi is dragging her feet on that?
Well, she thinks it's politics. I don't think it's good
Is
politics.
that OAN? Who's that?
Nancy Pelosi's been blocking it. Schumer's been blocking it. And I think they think it's good politics. I don't think it's good politics. I think it's bad politics, but I don't care about the politics. It's so great for our country because we're going to have all of these companies that are, it's a bigger employer. Well, let's say it's the same, but essentially it's the same power, all of these small businesses added together as the big companies. It's about 50-50. And it's so important. And they will be scattered if we weren't able to do what we're doing. And essentially, we're giving these small businesses that won't make it, they can't because they're closed. We're giving them money to take care of their employees so when we open, they can get back into business. It's been a very popular plan, even with Democrats. I think it basically passed
Yeah,
unanimously.
it's free money. Socialism.
Twice, the first section, which is $350 billion. So we're trying to get $250. Nancy Pelosi is blocking it. She sits in her house in San Francisco, overlooking the ocean.
With ice cream?
And she doesn't want to come back.
With the expensive fridge?
She doesn't want to
No.
come back. She doesn't want to come back to D.C. She's got to get back and get this thing approved. It's very important. Please, go ahead.
Dr. Burks, if I may, you again praised the American people for doing their bit over the past few weeks. But what goes through your mind when you see photographs of crowded beaches in Florida? Is that a concern for when we start seeing some of these restrictions being lifted?
Well, as I described, we go metro by metro, county by county, and so I'd have to link that with a specific county and look at their case rates. I believe the governor
Jacksonville.
and the public health system that Florida has, they have some of the best county public health individuals I have ever had to deal with. They are amazing because I had to work with them under HIV/AIDS. So if the county health directors believe that that's appropriate for their county, then I'm not going to second judge an individual's approach to this because I can't see into every single county and load the low rates. I can just see there's no cases. So I don't know if that's a county with very small cases or not, but I think their county health official would know.
And many of the counties, as you know, are really free of this horrible enemy. So we're opening up. You'll be
that,
seeing a
Dave
lot of
down
this
there?
country start to open up fairly quickly. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned the importance of social distancing, but for example, Stephen Moore, someone you appointed to your Open the Country task force, is organizing a protest in Wisconsin, but aren't they in a sense protesting
Duval
your
County.
very own guidelines?
Well, we have a flexibility. I didn't see what Stephen said. I can tell you he's a very good economist. He's been calling shots right.
He said we need to be the Rosa Parks of government injustices.
Well, there is a lot of injustice. When you look at Virginia, where they want to take your guns away, if they want to violate your Second Amendment, when you look at, I mean, look,
And
I'm
they're gonna
getting
use your
along very
guns to
nicely
shoot
with the governor
babies
of Michigan, but she has
after they're
things,
born?
Don't buy paint, don't buy roses, don't buy. I mean, she's got all these crazy things. I really
Yeah,
believe
stay inside your
somebody
house.
sitting in their boat in a lake should be okay. They shouldn't arrest people. Some of them are being unreasonable. I really believe that. They're being unreasonable. But I think Virginia's a great case, though, because they're using this. They're trying to take your guns away in Virginia. And if people in Virginia aren't careful, that's what's going to happen to them. So, yeah, I mean, I could see where he's coming from. I think it's a strong statement, because hopefully this will be over very soon for all of us. But some have gotten carried away.
Oh,
They have absolutely gotten carried
198
away.
days, my friend.
Protesters are protesting
It'll be
your
over
social
for us.
distancing guidelines.
I don't know. I mean, I notice there are a lot of protests out there. And I just think that some of the governors have gotten carried away. You know, you have a lot of people that don't have to be told to do what they're doing. They've been really doing everything we've asked them. We have a few states where, frankly, I spoke to the governors, and I could have gotten them to do, if I wanted to do what would have been perhaps politically correct. But they've been doing incredibly anyway, and as one of them said, everybody's doing exactly the same. In fact, our record is better than states where they're under a mandate or, you know, where they've agreed to do certain things. Now, we have some great states out there. We have incredible people in our country. And for the most part, that it's a strong statement, but I understand where he's coming from. And I think one of the greats would be one of the really important places that people really have to start looking at is what's going on in Virginia, because that's a mess with a government, with really a governor that's under siege anyway. Yeah, please.
Yes, sir.
No, with the beautiful head of white hair. Go ahead.
Wait. The other day
I'll
he
tell you
said
about, like, his
the
hair in about a
governor
minute
should be under
after he
siege.
asked the question.
With the Wall Street Journal. On that point, though, does the tweeting about, in the case of Virginia, linking the Second Amendment to some of these issues about lifting some of these restrictions in these states,
Yeah.
not potentially pose a concern for the governors and civil unrest and potentially in those cases? I have a second question, too.
Well, I think just for that question, I think that's an easy one. That's not even politics. We're entitled to a Second Amendment, and he's trying to take the Second Amendment, meaning that state is trying to take the Democrats in that state. The Republicans are fighting it. They're trying to take that.
But it's
that
not
Second
politics.
Amendment, right? That Second Amendment right away. To me, that's liberty. That's when I say liberate Virginia, I would say liberate Virginia when that kind of thing happens. And where does it all stop? So I think it's a very good analogy.
When you mandate the press
Sure, I mean, is
to
this the
behave
right
a certain
time
way.
to kind of bring in a Second Amendment issue?
I think when they talk about taking your guns away,
Second
and if
Amendment
you notice,
important. First Amendment.
At the beginning of this pandemic, there were more guns sold, I think, than at almost any time in history. So it's obviously a big issue. And then you have them working.
The governors
and
are doing
signing
way more than
documents trying
following
to
his
take
guidelines, actually.
your Second Amendment away.
The guidelines that
essentially.
the White
So
House
I
put
do
out
think
are
it's an appropriate
just
time to bring it
don't
up.
send your kids to school
Go
if they're
ahead,
sick
second.
and stay home if
Last
you're
week,
sick.
after kind
That's
of
it.
extraordinary slew of events from adversaries, North Korea, Russia,
Yeah.
China, and Iran, all kind of pushing back on U.S. policy or toying with U.S. military forces. What's your message to some of these countries who may be trying to take advantage?
I don't see it. No, I don't see it. We had a very good relationship with Russia.
I don't
we worked
see
on
it.
the oil deal together. I was with by telephone. King of
Aggressive
Saudi Arabia
actions
and
by
the president
adversaries.
of Russia.
I don't see it.
Vladimir
They've
Putin.
got a great
we worked
relationship.
out a deal on oil. That was a very important deal to them and to us and to Saudi Arabia. It was in a deadlock. You know it. You covered it very well. Actually, Wall Street Journal covered that very well. I worked with Putin and with the king on that. And President Putin was a total gentleman, and it was very important to get that done. And the king was great. And we actually had to bring in Mexico because Mexico was a lone holdout, and they showed great flexibility. You know the story. No, I think we're doing fine. Yeah, sure. It's North Korea. I see they're testing short-range missiles, and been doing it a long time. I received a nice note from him recently. It was a nice note. I think we're doing fine.
That was a nice note.
If I wasn't
So
elected,
test
you
some
would right
missiles.
now be at war with North Korea. Okay, I'll tell you for your people that don't understand the world and they don't understand how life works. if I wasn't elected, you would right now, maybe the war would be over, hopefully with a victory. But if you remember when I first came in, we didn't have ammunition. Not a good way to fight a war. President Obama left us no ammunition. Okay?
Not true.
And he left us virtually no medical and ventilators. He left us, the cupboard was dry, right? The cupboard was dry. No, I think right now you'd be at war, essentially, in some form, be over, it would be raging with North Korea if I weren't president. And we're doing just fine with North Korea, just fine. Let's see how it all ends up. You know, in the meantime, they said, oh, Trump's given up. And then they said, oh, really, what's he given up? And they said, I don't know. Then they said, he met. I met. No, I have a good relationship with Kim Jong-un. That's not a bad thing to have a good relationship. Obama wanted a relationship. He wouldn't meet with Obama.
A relationship.
Wouldn't meet with him. Okay, have a good relationship with him.
Obama never tried to
We
meet
met
with
at the
Kim
line.
Jong-un.
I stepped over the line.
Or
the
ill.
first time anything like that's ever. It's all good. It's just.
Oh, they stepped over a line.
It's good. But when they
Everything's
say,
great.
The stupid people. I call them stupid people.
The
Or
stupid
the
people.
haters. They say Trump's given up so much. Really? I've actually increased the sanctions. China's been very good on the border. In fact, right now the border is stone cold closed between China and North Korea. Our relationship with China was good until they did this. Once we found out about this,
Yeah,
once
it's
we found out,
closed
look, we just made a
because
trade
Kim
deal with
Jong
China's gonna
closed
have
it
to
down after China got the virus.
$250 billion a year in our product. $50 billion from the farmers. $40 to $50 billion from the farmers. The relationship was good when we were signing that, but then all of a sudden you hear about this. So it's a big difference. You know, the question was asked, would you be angry at China? Well, the answer might very well be a very resounding yes, but it depends. Was it a mistake that got out of control, or was it done deliberately? Okay, there's a big difference between those two. In either event, they should have let us go in. You know, we asked to go in very early, and they didn't want us in. I think they were embarrassed. I think they knew it was something bad, and I think they were embarrassed. But, you know, no, I think we're doing very well. Well, so you said Russia, you said China, you said North Korea, Iran. When I came in, Iran was a terror. We had 82 points of fighting. We had 18 points of major confliction. The first week, I said, tell me about Iran. Sir, we have 18 points of confliction, meaning Yemen, Syria, or Iraq. They're going into Iraq all over the place. They're a much different nation right now. I stopped that horrible deal, and they want to talk, except that Kerry violated the Logan Act. He made the deal, and he doesn't want them to make a deal because I would have made a deal, in my opinion, except that John Kerry, who made the deal originally, which was a stupid deal to make, gave him $150 billion, gave him $1.8 billion in cash in green. That would be more than this room 10 times with $100 bills. That you could fill up this room 10 times with $100 bills, and it's not that small a room. And I say he violated the Logan Act.
The whole
I think it was a
$1.8
major
billion
violation. I think we would have had a deal if it wasn't for John Kerry. But he doesn't want to be number one embarrassed. Number two, he said, let's wait till after the election. Maybe Sleepy Joe Biden's going to win. Who does want to be number one embarrassed? And if Sleepy Joe Biden wins, you'll own the United States. Yeah. And China will own the United States. China's paid us, you know, from the Wall Street Journal, hundreds of billions of dollars. Is that right? Tariffs.
And they own 20% of our debt.
A lot of that money.
Which
small
you've increased.
But a lot of money to the farmers, and it kept the farmers going great. All right, but we're getting tens of billions of dollars in tariffs.
China is not
for those
paying
of you that say,
the tariffs.
China devalued their currency in order to pay these. We didn't pay. China paid. They don't like to write that.
China's currency has gone from 15 on the dollar to 14 on the dollar. Not that big of a deal.
Have numerous countries waiting to see whether or not Sleepy Joe wins, because if Sleepy Joe won, they own our country. They will take our country. You know, we had back.
Where are they going to take
2 months? We had by far.
So hard to put it anywhere.
And China was supposed to catch us. You know better than anybody. Wall Street Journal. For years, I've heard by 2019, China will catch us. There's only one problem. Trump got elected in 2016. That was a big difference. And
nobody was saying by
leaps and bounds
2019.
above China.
It's 2023, 2025.
Problem with the plague, right? China was having the worst year they've had in 67 years. That was before the plague. Now they're getting really hurt, and so is everybody getting hurt. I don't want them to get hurt, but they're all getting hurt. Everybody's getting hurt. It's a horrible thing that's happened. But we had the greatest economy in the world by far. China isn't even close. Go back 2 months. And we're going to keep it that way.
What was this question
When
on?
you mentioned Iran.
Oh,
Iran is a
adversaries.
much different country than it was. When I first came in, Iran was going to take over the entire Middle East. Right now, they just want to survive. They're having protests every week. They're loaded up with the plague, which I don't want. I've offered to help them if they want. If they need ventilators, which they do, I would send them ventilators. We have thousands of excess ventilators coming in, and here we have a stockpile of ventilators, and we're starting to send them so that hospitals can fill up their stockpile, which they should have. New York had a chance to get 16,000 ventilators, and they chose not to do it, and I understand that. It's a hard decision for a thing that may or may not happen. I fully understand that. I'm not even complaining
It's a
about that.
fake story, by the
I'm only
way.
saying this. Iran was a terror when I came into office.
Terror.
Right now, they don't want to mess around with us. They don't want to mess around with us. Two things. North Korea, same sanctions we've always had, except more. We haven't given anything. I think you'll
These are
hopefully take
sanctions.
that back to the Wall Street Journal because they really don't understand it. They really don't. And with Iran, I mean, that's a different country right now. And they
Iran
won't
is a
make deal.
different country.
The only reason they're being shamed in because the guy that gave them the sweetheart didn't want to met with them many times. He should have
Kerry?
never met with them. And in my opinion, he's telling them, don't wait. Maybe Trump will lose, and then you can negotiate with a patsy, with a weak guy, and you'll take over between you and Russia.
Kerry was
Nobody's
doing this
been
3
tougher
years
on
ago?
Putin. He knows it better than anybody. Nobody's been tougher on Putin than me. Look at the sanctions. Look at what I did with their pipeline going into Europe. Nobody even knew about it. I exposed it. Now everybody talks about it. I think it's a terrible thing for Germany to do. But at the same time, I have a very good relationship with Putin, and I was able to make a
Relationship.
deal with Russia and Saudi Arabia and OPEC Plus. They call it OPEC Plus. That's
We're
going
all
to save
confused, Kim.
us, Texas, North Dakota, Oklahoma,
Ever since the Electoral College was
other states,
invented.
energy states, going to save
Not
us
in
hundreds of
1776,
thousands
by the
of
way.
jobs. And in fact, your paper,
The
wrote
Articles
an
of Confederation
incredible
didn't have an Electoral College.
editorial for a change that Trump made a great deal for our country. That was a nice thing. I was shocked to see it coming out of the Wall Street Journal. Thank you all very much. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was quick.
How many asymptomatic people have been tested? Is it possible to get that number from you guys?
Are the doctors going to stay? Is anyone going to stay? Okay, so that was... It's about an hour. Okay. So,